Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate the RATPAC. You have put out wonderful educational videos. I've seen a number of them, and you have a fantastic organization, so it's my pleasure to be here tonight.
So Howard gave me some information. I put together a little presentation so we'd have some links. And tonight's presentation is available at tiny.cc/LICWC for Long Island CW Club. And of course, that will also be posted with the materials that go along with tonight's video by Dan after the session. This is the homepage of the Long Island CW group. And this was a couple days ago. You can notice they have over 2,100 members back then, and I'm guessing it probably went up a few since the day I copied this. And the link to this is available also right here at longislandcwclub.org. So I'm going to ask a few questions, and then we'll go through some of the slides, and we'll keep alternating between that. So Howard, first, if you could start off with sort of the elevator pitch, the small or quick overview of the Long Island CW Club, and also what and when was the initial idea to start the LICWC?
Okay, Anthony. Well, it's going on now about 5 years. Right after Field Day on Long Island, we came to realize that there really wasn't enough operators for CW to support the demand for CW and Field Day. People who are active in that particular event know that you'll get 2 points for every CW contact versus 1 for sideband. So there's quite an interest in having full-time CW operators, but there weren't enough. So I was having lunch with my friend Rich K2UPS once the summer right after that. I mentioned to Rich, I said, why don't we start a club on Long Island to teach CW and try and give back and help fill this demand? And Rich said yes right away. And we started and developed the club. We called it Long Island CW Club because we thought we would kind of strong arm 30 or 40 of our best friends into joining. But here we are going on 5 years later, and we have over 2,100 members in all 50 states and 32 countries, running 75 classes and forums per week on Zoom. So it developed into that very quickly, Anthony.
Well, very good. Could you talk a little bit about the teaching and learning process for teaching CW in the Long Island Morse Code Club?
Well, we teach many different levels of CW. The primary goal for all of it, though, is to get students on the air within 3 to 4 months of taking classes, because we believe that getting on the air is the gel that makes everything that you're learning congeal. Without getting on the air, your learning curve is not going to be as strong. CW is like any language that you would study, whether it's Spanish or French or even Asian languages. It has to be used, it has to be spoken, it has to be heard under different conditions that are present on the air. And these things make everything come together as opposed to just listening to computer generated code. So we structure the club to get people on the air. And we have classes at all different levels from beginners to advanced. Now, we also know that just learning CW wouldn't necessarily be fun for everybody. So we figured, let's combine this with things that would keep people interested and get them involved in a community, which would in turn be a place to go and support them. So we combined the learning of CW with having fun. And the fun is delivered in all types of daily forums on all type of subjects, some related to radio directly, some more into radio and related technology. And we'll also have, like we did Saturday night, we'll have a game night, which we did in a Christmas theme based on CW. So Anthony, we're playing bingo in CW, unscramble words in CW, and even hangman in CW, which we call snowman. So by combining the fun along with learning, people want to stay.
And I have a screenshot of the calendar. This is just 1 week of the Zoom sessions that are going on with the Long Island CW Club. And as you can see, the type is a little bit small, but you can see in addition to a variety of different classes at different levels, all the other things that Howard's talking about, and some more that he hasn't even mentioned yet. So just this is just an overview of the calendar, and there's a link in this presentation to the calendar, so you can see what it all looks like. Howard, could you talk a little bit about how the trainers are selected and how you assist in developing the training process with the trainers?
Well, it's an interesting question. People ask me that. How do you find your teachers? You know, Anthony, it becomes very apparent quite quickly who's getting very much involved with the club, who's taking the learning of CW serious, who's coming to most of the classes. And I don't visit all the classes because I don't have time, but if I get to see somebody often, I know very well that they're active in the club. And it's very productive when somebody becomes a teacher, because when you're a teacher, that increases your ability to learn by yourself too. So people that are very interested in CW usually become our instructors, and I don't have to look very hard for them.
I have a slide up on the screen right now. Could you talk a little bit about the flexibility in the training process and how people can attend different sessions at different levels, and how it's much more driven by their interest as opposed to a fixed schedule?
Yes, we have rolling admissions to all classes. So you can start anytime and you can go into any class you want. Even as a beginner, if you wanted to go into the advanced classes, you'd be welcome. And why? Because we believe that if people see what the end game is and the goalposts of their CW learning, they'll be able to direct themselves to get there better. So all the classes are open, and you can take as many classes as you want, or if you don't have time, you want to take a little bit and come back another time. We don't monitor this, and we don't force anybody with a regimen. It's totally up to you. The teaching methods that we use for beginners is we use the Fornsworth Method, which is the collective wisdom of everybody these days, where the characters are sent at a faster rate, like 20 words a minute, but spaced out at 5 words a minute. The theory being that you'll get to faster CW quicker if you're listening to those letters at a faster speed. And we use the Koch order of letters. We'll start out with K, R, and S as opposed to ABC, because Koch many years ago theorized that you wouldn't necessarily be able to memorize the dots and dashes if they used his order as opposed to the others. So that's the way we're teaching. But, you know, my personal view on all of this, Anthony, teaching now for going on 5 years, if you do not get on the air with whatever you have after 3 or 4 months of learning, none of this is going to make much sense, and things will happen that people experience plateauing, counting. This is a language that needs to be used. It needs to be challenged by QRM, QSB, QRN, all of those things that come out of a radio, which you're not going to hear out of a computer-generated program.
And I know that you asked the people to be able to use a computer-generated program for some of their practicing, and one of the things you also suggest is that they have a key and a way to either a code oscillator or to use the radio side tone. Could you talk a little bit about what what's expected that the student will have to be active in the class.
Right. Anthony, we believe that a better student will result training with a straight key in the beginning. Now, you could read about this on QRZ forums, and someone will throw out a question, what's better, straight key or key, or you're going to get 5,000 answers. But we believe that when you use your mind to make the dots and dashes, telling your hand what to do, where the mind talks all the way through your arm down to your hand, there's a better mind-hand connection to the CW as opposed to using a keyer, which is automatically making the dots and the dashes for you. So we suggest a straight key up to the point of about 18 words a minute, where you start knocking on the door of head copy and you have to put the pencil down because you can't write that fast. Same thing with bugs and cooties and more specialized manual keys. We recommend to put that off to a later time. However, if there is some sort of physical issue where you have carpal tunnel or something wrong with your hands or your wrists, of course, if you feel more comfortable on a keyer, no one's going to stop you from doing that. And Anthony, in the end, we also believe the final decision is yours. If you want to learn on a keyer and you don't want to learn on a straight key, no one's going to say you can't do that. So we're totally flexible. We're not cast in stone, but that's our recommendation.
And one of the software suggestions is the G4FON software. Could you talk just a little bit about that?
Yes, G4FON, many of you know that Ray passed away this year. Unfortunately, he was a wonderful man. And we promised to keep his legacy going. And we still use G4FON, and we got his website with the help of others in the UK up and running again. We like that program. It's been improved. It's easy to use. There's also a contest trainer, but you can use any CW player at home that you want, preferably using the same Koch order of letters that we do with the G4FON program. And another question, Anthony, that comes up all the time, well, what if I only have a Mac or Linux and I don't have a Windows machine because that's a Windows program? On Zoom, you'll use the G4FON of the instructor, and that's what you'll be hearing. At home, you can use anything that plays on your Mac. And some people are successful using a program called Crossover to get G4FON to work on a Mac and also Linux. So the bottom line is it doesn't matter what computer you have, and anything is fine at home.
Thank you. So I just have a few more slides here on this particular thing. And one of the big things that you've already alluded to is the fact that not only are you teaching CW, but you're also teaching CW QSO skills as part of the process. And I talk a little bit about that aspect of the training process.
Well, as I mentioned, Anthony, the focus and the goal of the Long Island CW Club is to get our students on the air. Now, we realize, and I'll spend a minute to talk about this, that there's a deep-rooted fear for the majority of students about getting on the air. We understand this, and we've structured our club to combat that and make people feel as comfortable as possible. But we get it. We understand that that's out there. And then we don't push people or expect them to get on the air. And we have many different classes to train people to feel comfortable to get on the air. One of them even starts off with doing CW over the internet on a program called V, like Victory Band, V-Band. And it's a very good intermediate step before you get on the air. Then we have many different classes at different levels, from beginners to advanced, to work with people on the air. Now, how does it work? The class will all be on Zoom at the same time, but we all have our radios on in the shack right next to our computer. And today at my 5:30 class, we were all on 40 meters together, about 15 of us. And we were all working the same DX stations while being on Zoom. Now, some of these stations in the DX portion of the band were sending too fast for those students. So I would do the decoding, take the pressure off them, tell them when to go, what to send, calm them down, and they practice on their what we call Qso Protocol, their timing and everything. And it was very exciting. There was a station coming in Long Path from Argentina about 6 o'clock on 40 meter CW. Every one of us in the class worked him, and he had like one of those visible logs on his QRZ page, Anthony, and it listed every one of the students that worked him in a row because we went one after another. It was really cool. So tonight, after this class, I'll make a recap and announcement on Groups IO to the Long Island CW Club and show everybody what we did to kind of reduce the fear and the anxiety and show everybody that, hey, this is not as hard as you might think. Take the leap of faith. That's what we do.
And that's great. And Howard, I did not practice these questions with Howard, so he doesn't know what I'm going to ask him. But he just anticipated my very next question because my next question was asking about the fear of CW. So Howard was able to read my paper even before I let him know what the question was. Among some of the challenges listed on your website, and I've heard some of your talks before, one of the challenges that some learners experience is the so-called plateaus. Could you discuss the aspect of plateaus in learning?
Let me tell you where plateaus, in my opinion, come from, Anthony. You know, people think that they have to be perfect in Morse code before they get on the air. I have my theories about where that particular feeling comes from, but it's real. When you practice over and over with computer-generated code, it causes problems like plateaus. Now, what's a plateau? Well, you get stuck at, let's say, 15 words a minute. You can't get past it because you don't have that challenge from the way signals are delivered to you on the air. It creates different white matter pathways when you have QSB, QRM, and QRN and all stations on top of you, and then your brain has to hear the signal that you want to listen to. When this is going on, you're really using a language. When it's delivered to you in a clinical way at 700 hertz or 650 hertz, you're not really getting those same challenges.
Well, very good. Let's sort of switch gears a little bit. If you could talk a little bit about one aspect that I think is really interesting is the Kids CW program.
Kids CW program is wonderful. I'll tell you how it started. We had an instructor that started with us. It's a very fascinating story. Just to give a little background of how you can advance quickly in CW. We had a fellow in October of 2018 join the club without a license, Rob K2MZ. I remember the date. It was October 6th. Had no license, didn't know any CW. By March of 2019, COVID hit. Already, he was an extra. He had done 2,400 QSOs on CW, and he was ready to teach the kids, Anthony. Can you imagine this? Now, that's CW on steroids, but it shows you the connection between practicing on the air and increasing your learning curve. So he started the kids program. To date, we've taught 350 kids, over 350 kids, and we have between 4 and 6 classes a week. Some of them have gotten their licenses too. So it's a very important thing for us to make sure that kids are involved in CW. I mean, obviously, that's the future of our hobby and the future of CW to pass the skill on.
Another area that the club has addressed is the lack of YLs in amateur radio and on CW. And you have a YL group. Could you talk a little bit about that?
You know, it was very important for us to bring in YLs. We really wanted to do that from the beginning. We wanted to create an atmosphere in the club where they felt safe, because of course in this hobby the preponderance of radio operators are men. So we started off and we created classes for YLs only. And it's very interesting that we have now about 140 YLs. And you would think that they really would want to stay in their YL only classes, but that's not the case. They really want to be part of the mainstream club. Now they do go to their YL 4CW class for fun, extra fun, and there's only women in that. But they're side by side with all the men, and we make sure that the overall etiquette of the club is such that the behavior and the decorum is proper. In our particular club, we don't allow anybody to be critical about anybody else or to say anything or write anything on Groups.io that's not appropriate. And if they did, it would be shut down in a matter of minutes. So the YLs are very involved in the mainstream, and they're also teaching. We have a number of teaching YLs, and it's fantastic. I mean, we only got about 140 out of like 2,150 members. I would certainly like to have more, and we've done everything possible to make it known amongst the YL radio groups that we exist, but that's all we got so far.
You know, one thing you said, I hope people caught it when you said it, because you said they like to go to the YL class as additional fun. And that's one of the things that I've really noticed with the members of the Long Island CW Club. They're not just going to their one class to learn CW. They're talking about, oh, I want to go to this other class because this class is fun. And that's one of the things that I think you've really done. When we look over the calendar, which I'll bring it back to the calendar just so people can see that. Could you talk a little bit about how some of these non-CW instruction forms developed? I know the basis is to have fun, and talk just about maybe how some of them developed and what was some of the impetus for some of them starting.
Well, you know, in the beginning, we had some fun just coming up with naming the classes with catchy names, and if somebody mentions something, why don't we have this type of class? Why don't we do it? So, like I said, one person said, why don't we play bingo with CW one night, and that became the basis of our quarterly game night. But let me give you a rundown of the type of things that we do on a daily basis. And, you know, listen, we get it, Anthony. There's a lot of distractions today in today's world that would be calling you rather than to be laboring over learning CW. I mean, Netflix has got stuff that's out of this world now. And your whole family's watching Netflix, and they're calling you, you know, come down and watch this, and you're sitting up in the shack learning CW. And if you're doing all by yourself and bored to tears, you know, you're not going to stay with that. You're not going to stay with that. Well, maybe it's a little bit easier now with the lockdowns, and we seem to go a little bit backwards now, the way COVID is going into the winter now. So maybe it's a little bit easier to concentrate. But in a normal life, there's plenty of other things to do. So the things that we wanted to keep going on a daily basis would be things bringing people into the club. So they take their class and then they stay on for the forum. So let me tell you what goes on a daily basis, if I can, okay? I'll go through this quickly. Monday night, we have a forum called Radio and Related Technology. All of these forums that I'm going to talk about usually bring in outside speakers. So we could have someone speaking about, you know, the journeys to find Amelia Earhart's lost plane. Some people would be speaking about the placement of undersea cables underneath the Atlantic Ocean and how that even started back in the Civil War and it is going on today. You have experts talking about that. You have, you know, people talking about the SETI program. You know, it could be computer museums come in and give you a walk around of all the vintage computers, you know, those things that are as big as refrigerators and stuff like that we don't see anymore. So those are the type of things we bring in Monday night. Monday night also has a forum called The Doctor Is In, and that's led by Greg WA1JXR. The man's a wonderful speaker, and he's an engineer, and he teaches beautifully. So people ask him questions. The doctor is in. You ask the doctor a question, you get an answer. And these people can be asked anything, and they know the answer. It's amazing. So we're fortunate to have that. And then On other nights, on Wednesday night, we have a CW makers class where they actually build things and talk about building things together. Friday night, we have this internet CW and V-band, and we also have CW fun night on Friday, where they'll send jokes in CW back and forth to each other and do other fun things. In the morning on Saturday, there's other forums. There's a QRP forum, there's a portable operations forum, and then I run the boat anchor forum, where we all bring in outside speakers to this. And as a matter of fact, Anthony, you're going to be speaking at a couple of these things.
Yes, it's going to be the Tentec Argonaut. The Odyssey of the Argonauts is going to be my topic for the boat anchor group coming up in January or February.
That's
on
right.
my calendar. That's
right. And then on Sunday, we have a forum that's just dedicated to the Morserino, which is like an Arduino-based CW unit. Then we have the antenna forum, where they bring in outside speakers on all different aspects of antenna grounding and propagation. So every single day, there's something else going on. So you have your basic, beginner to advanced training, your rote learning classes. You have your get on the air training classes at different levels, interspersed with these educational classes that round out 75 classes per week when you throw in the kids.
And I want to point out to the listeners also that these are interactive classes. In a lot of cases, there's a lot of give and take and questions and answers going on in these classes. So they're not just driven by the instructor, they're also driven by the attendees.
Well, that's a tenet of the club, Anthony. This club is built on listening. I was just talking about this in my head copy class last night. The wisest people listen and don't talk. If you listen to the knowledge, the collective knowledge in this club, and harness it, it's amazing. I can't believe the knowledge base that's available. And when people are comfortable, Anthony, they'll offer to give it.
The club does most of the things online, but there's also some non-online activities. Could you talk a little bit about those?
Well, COVID, right?
Yes.
If we didn't have this, we would have had meetings all around the country to get to see each other face to face at certain events. Dayton, Hamcation, we would go, to, let's say, these famous boats and vessels that have ham radio stations on them. Interesting museums get together there and have meetings. We haven't been able to do that, and it doesn't look like it's going to happen any day soon. But we still manage to have a luncheon every few months on Long Island, face to face. Before COVID, what you see on the right here is a replica of a Marconi shack. Long Island was the home to many Marconi sites. And we did the research for one of the towns, a town called Babylon, Long Island, which is on the South Shore of Long Island. And we helped them develop the history, the proper history of a Marconi station in a house that still exists there. And the town rewarded us by building an exact replica of the shack that still exists. It's in another location. And on Marconi Day, which is in April, we operated from there. The middle picture happens to be my young daughter learning CW when the kids program first started. That was an article done by the local newspaper by us. So we do have, and we do portable operating together on Long Island. So we do many face-to-face things on Long Island, and at the same time, a lot of these things are put on Zoom at the same time so people can enjoy what we're doing. We never like to segregate ourselves from the rest of the club because there's only about 100-something Long Island people out of the 2,100 people in the club. So we have to be mindful that this is very international. Anthony, I never would have called the club the Long Island CW Club if I knew what it would turn into. but we had no idea. If you told me 5 years ago that I would be talking to Anthony here on the RATPAC, I wouldn't believe it.
Well, one of the other things that you've been doing is you've been developing relationships with other CW groups, and there's a great resource page, and this is directly from your website, these links to a number of clubs. And that's one of the things that a lot of people, if they really do get into CW operation, they might want to consider belonging to one of these more established CW clubs. And the idea that you have them available listed on your website is great.
Well, I'll tell you, Anthony, this page needs a little bit of updating. And I probably didn't tell you about this yet, but did you know that we started the International CW Council about a year ago?
I heard rumor that. I don't know the details. If you could talk a little bit more about that, I think that'd be great.
There'll be an article coming out in CW Ops magazine in a month or two. Back in January, we thought it would be a good idea to unite all the CW clubs we could find in the world. Why not get everybody on the same page with the same thinking process? Because all of us want CW to continue and advance and not disappear. But why be separate entities? I'm very pleased to inform that as of today, the International CW Council, which has its own website, internationalcwcouncil.org, has 28 CW clubs worldwide in it. We have a calendar on that particular website that is the only CW only calendar in the world that lists every single CW event from these 28 clubs. These 28 clubs are in Asia, United States, South America, Europe, and Russia, all working together, and we've accomplished a number of goals so far.
Well, that is great news. Could you talk a little bit about membership in the organization?
The Long Island CW Club has a few levels of membership. If you wanted to join for 1 year, it's $30, 2 years, $50. Nobody really goes for the 3 years anymore. We try and encourage everybody to go for lifetime because it's the easiest thing for us accounting-wise. When we have 90 people coming in per month and then up to 90 people needing to re-up every month, it's an accounting nightmare, Anthony, and it's much easier on the club if you saw the value in it and just join for life and then could come and go as you please forever. But if somebody wants to join for a year or two, that's fine too, and many people do. There is, as it says there is no cost for the kids program. And on top of it, Anthony, we're very dedicated to the people that are not as fortunate as us. We have a program to teach CW to handicapped individuals, hearing impaired people, people who have vision problems, and we have a trial program going on right now to teach CW to autistic individuals, and it's working. So anybody, Anthony, that has any type of health issue gets a lifetime honorary. Anybody who is a clergy person, lifetime honorary. Active, military, first responders, police, all immediately get lifetime honorary membership.
Well, that's great. And this again is the link for the slide presentation. And that it concludes all the slides, but definitely not the information we'd like to go through. I think one of the things that I really want to stress to the group is that I don't see this as just a CW club. That's what it is, but I see this as a model, a possible model for a new type of amateur radio group, a multifaceted club with diverse interest and diverse geographic distribution. Could you discuss this aspect, and do you have any ideas how others could replicate this process with a different central focus than CW?
This is a very deep and interesting question, Anthony. I don't like to talk a blue streak because I mentioned before I'm more of a listener, but a question like this is deep. It involves me talking a little bit about my philosophy of organizations and what I believe is the most effective. I believe the most effective organization is run from the bottom up. Now, what do I mean by that? In the Long Island CW Club, we have no board and we have no officers. And people refer to me as the president. I don't. I'm a member. And when you eliminate a hierarchy and you listen to your membership very closely and you take all of their suggestions to heart. Now, you can't implement every one, but you honor them and you recognize them. And everybody is kind of at the same level. The ideas and the volunteerism is stronger than being run from the top down. Organizations that are run from the top down tend to get stale because everybody relies on the same officers, the same board. Some of those people get tired and they feel trapped in that type of position. And some of the membership might not want to buck the trend, and they would feel kind of embarrassed or intimidated to make any suggestions. So it only moves as good as it did from the beginning. So by having this wonderful base of volunteers and ideas, we never run out of ways to improve. I have to admit, I was getting burned out by manually bringing in 90 to 120 people per month with an Excel spreadsheet. I reached out to the club for help. And Brian, N6BG, the inventor of VBand, built for me an automatic registration system to work exactly the way I work using Google Sheets, where now I can do it by clicking and anybody else, God forbid anything happened to me, could take over. This would never have happened if I was acting like a boss and a president. Another thing that happened recently is that there's a fellow in the club, David N2DEE, and Rick WAKO. Rick takes care of the daily schedule that he sends out, which is a lot of work. David saw how we were struggling with this and the calendar on the website, which I was populating manually, which would take me days to put 75 classes up there going forward 4 or 5 months at a time on a WordPress calendar. It was insane. I hated it. They built for me and for Rick an automatic system. They did it. This wouldn't have happened if people were intimidated to help. So, when you have organizations that don't necessarily have people face-to-face anymore, where you're relying on Zoom, which is the wave of the future, to bring people in. And, our ham population is getting older, Anthony. Not everybody can come to a meeting. So you really have to rely, and you should have Zoom on, even if you're having face-to-face meetings. It's very good to have the proper organization that rewards people, appreciates people, and never intimidates or criticizes people. And you'd be amazed what you get back. Amazed.
With that great answer, I need to rephrase my question because I was mistaken. I was talking about new types of amateur radio groups, but I think this is also a great model for reviving existing groups. So I think I was actually mistaken in my question there. Your answer actually made me refine my question. So what I'd like to, the last question I'd like to ask you, are there any additional things you'd like to share with the group? And then we'll open it up to questions from the group. So I'm going to go ahead and close the slide share here. And if you have any other things that you'd like to talk about, and then we'll open it up to questions from the group. While we're getting ready for Howard to answer this, just remember you can type questions into the chat and we'll be watching for them, or you can raise your hand and let us know that you want to ask the question in person. But Howard, if you want to give us some information on things I forgot to ask you or didn't think to ask you about.
I'll tell you something, Anthony. I love having questions. I'd rather answer a question than have me, talk. Especially that last question was, or the way I interpreted it, Anthony. I'm sorry if I skewed it a little bit, but it's basically the way the Long Island CW Club is structured. I'd rather listen to the questions. I mean, I love the back and forth, and any CW question or any organizational question would be appreciated. And I know as soon as you ask for questions, there's going to be some silence here till people get warmed up, but I don't bite. I love the back and forth.
Well, that's great then. So we will open it up now to the group. Please feel free to either raise your hand or type it in chat. And we have a couple people in the RATPAC here that will keep an eye on the chat. And don't be shy.
We have, looks like Larry got his hand up. Go ahead, Larry.
Okay, guys. It sounds to me like you took some Edward Deming classes on team building. You're building from the bottom up. That's how I have my team at the Aries group, where it's usually the person that's on the ground knows more what's going on than the person in the high tower. Is that a correct assumption?
Well, I have to admit, I don't know that particular person. So I didn't study this from any one particular place, Larry, or learn it from a podcast. But, there's many things in life. There's been many corporations that have had people make things for them, and they got basically unnoticed. How many times do you hear people saying the most important thing at their job, if they were offered it, would be recognition over money? Most people would say, if my boss would recognize something that I did, that's more important than if I got a raise, which is a fascinating concept.
Well, look up Edward Deming if you have a choice.
Yeah, how do you spell his name, Larry?
I really can't remember right offhand. It's Deming, Edward Deming. He's the one that was sent to Japan after World War II to revise their automotive.
Wow. Well, he really he did his work maybe too good, because that really put a lot of pressure on Detroit.
Deming, Howard Deming, right?
Howard Deming?
Yeah.
Howard
Interesting.
Deming, Deming, Deming.
Sounds
Okay.
like you're familiar with him, huh, Bill?
No,
Really? No, you're not. Anyhow, he turned around a lot of things, and I actually worked under those similar conditions on some projects, and it was very, very successful. Got a lot of managers and directors upset, but as you say, it gives the person recognition. And also when you're teaching that, it allows the students to be able to put input so you can really understand where their issues are, because every student learns differently. And I think
Absolutely
you're doing great, especially when you're getting the kids into CW, because that's just like, throwing honey at a bear.
Well, a couple of things on that, Larry. Many corporations, not only are they run from the top down, but they're run with fear passed down. So in other words, the motivation is whether or not you're going to lose your job or not. That doesn't create ingenuity. It doesn't. That creates mediocrity. people are at their best when they're relaxed. And, you know, society is very uptight. I mean, the pressures that we're going through just with what's going on, you know, with health and environmental, that added to normal life things. People are under more pressure now than ever. Now, it's amazing about the kids, Larry. We have kids as young as 7 years old learning CW. But the ones that are fascinating are the 12, 11, and 13-year-olds. 12, you know, 11, 12, 13. Those people, like, if something would take an adult 4 months to learn, these people at that age learn in a month. It's unbelievable. It's like the way we were when we were kids. It's very refreshing to see.
Okay,
I have to definitely commend you on your project. It is great. I'm gonna probably be looking into it myself after the first of the year.
Well, we'd be love to have you. Thank you very much.
okay.
Go ahead, Steve. KA6 UGAS.
Hi, I'm probably represent quite a few people. I got my license in the 1960s, and so as a novice, I learned the 5 words per minute, and as a general, I learned 13 words a minute, and then quickly forgot what I'd learned because I wasn't really all that interested in CW. But I've just recently retired, and it's on my bucket list to learn again. And one of my questions is back in those days, there was a kind of a segment of the band set out for novices that operated, you know, there were a lot of slow senders, tortoises, as you say. And I'm just kind of wondering, for somebody to set a goal for themselves to be reasonably functional, you can always ask somebody to slow down. But to be reasonably functional, what's the goal in terms of speed? Where do you really have to be so that you're not feeling like everybody's zooming around you, so to speak, when you're operating?
You know, it's interesting you use that word tortoise because we have a daily class, Steve, that's called the CW Tortoises.
I saw it. That's the reason why.
and the person who started that class, his daughter actually made a beautiful image of a tortoise with an antenna on it, and underneath the tortoise's like foot is a key. It's very cute. You can be very comfortable on the band, Steve, between 13 and 15 words a minute and never have to advance. There's plenty to be done at that speed. The SKCC has many different people congregating in just below the FT8 section of the bands. You'll find some slower CW, and you'll do fine there. But you know, the more you practice at this skill, the more you use this language, you're naturally going to go ahead. And you'll start knocking at the speed where you'll put the pen down and you'll get into the 18 to 20 word a minute, and then that'll become doable and you'll creep up. It's a function of how much time you put into it. But if you don't, you'll be fine sending at that speed. You'll have plenty of QSOs between 13. And as a matter of fact, every Sunday night, the folks from K1USN, that's a big club in Massachusetts, they started a slow speed sprint, which is every Sunday night at 7, and they have one on Friday evening too. Our club has a class dedicated towards the Sunday night sprint, and we teach people how to operate that and get them through it. I don't send any higher than 13 words a minute, and I make about 30-something contacts in an hour. Now they're short, it's just state and name because it's a contest. But you know, you say hello, good evening, you mention the other guy's name, you say 73s, you help them out if they're a little slow, and it's a lot of fun.
I just put a link in the chat for that. It's the SST is the name of it, Slow Speed Test, and K1USN. So there's a link in the chat if you're not familiar with that.
Great.
Other
Thanks.
questions?
Put in the chat.
Thanks, Barry. I was talking to you and I was on mute. I don't know about you guys. Most of us people, I see Dan's got his hand up. Most of us has been around for a little while. Got the gray hair or no hair or whatever hair. Probably getting a little warms and fuzzies just talking about CW, bring back memories when we lived, eat, and breathed that stuff and how much fun it was. And we moved on. And anyway, okay, let's pick up some more hands here. Dan, I think you were first. Go ahead.
Yeah, first of all, Howard, thank you very much. Your enthusiasm is overwhelming, and egged on by Anthony, I think everybody's revved up about relearning CW. I was a no code tech, and that wasn't enough, so I just kept going. And it seemed like I got to 13 words pretty easily and enjoyed it while I was working on the 20 words. But a half hour after I passed the 20 word, which was copy only, I couldn't have done it a second time. And it seemed like such an overwhelming chore for me to be fluent because I don't have any kind of ear. And actually, I don't have very much hearing. I just never got into it. And I got my extra 20 some years ago. And it's on my bucket list only because I'm a firm believer that historic languages, and no offense there, but the CW goes back even before the version we're using now, are worth maintaining and redeeming. So I try to pay attention to presentations like this. And I remember how I learned it back then, and I know there have to be better ways. Priorities keep me from spending as much time as I want doing anything. But CW has never been dislodged from my bucket list. So I suppose it's, it's just something that some people can't avoid, and all the power to them. God bless them, don't stop. And something that a lot of us, like Big D Dan just said, were hot and heavy way back when, and now it's just on our bucket list. So what you guys are doing is wonderful, and involving the kids and making it easy for them and YLs. We really don't have enough YLs involved in anything. I thank you. That's really all I wanted to say is thank you.
Well, thank you for your kind words, Dan. And, Dan, if you set aside 15 to 20 minutes a day for 3 or 4 months, I think you could do it. 3 or 4 months, get you on the air, take the leap. You'd be able to do it. It's not that hard.
That's exactly what's on my bucket list, is finding that 15 minutes a day, because it's behind a bunch of other, self and family first things that I just feel more strongly obliged to fulfill.
Well, that's totally understandable. And that's why we don't really pressure anybody, because if you really want this and it's a priority, then you'll do it. Like that fellow that I was telling you about, K2MZ, who didn't have a license in October of 2018, 2,400 QSOs later, he's teaching the kids in March, all by himself. And we had at that time something like 30 kids in the program because they weren't going to school. So from zero to teaching kids, which not everybody could do to begin with. I mean, it was his priority.
Well, I'll forever be embarrassed because I'm not a real ham since I don't do CW.
No, that's not true. There's no link between being a ham and doing CW. We were talking about that in my head copy class the other night, how some people were saying, well, if you didn't learn, if you didn't have you were no code extra, you weren't this. I don't go for any of that type of talk. I don't.
Well, no offense intended. I spend all my spare time playing with digital at the higher end of the spectrums and speed. So for me to go back to think, it's this amateur radio has something for everybody.
Right.
We can all involve ourselves from, nonce to ninja in any aspect of it. So I'm just saying kudos for keeping CW alive.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, Dan. FT8, the computer, can listen to signals like -24. You'll know what I'm talking about, right?
I do, yes.
A good CW operator can hear a signal at minus 24.
There's a limit to human hearing compared to what you can dig out of the mud.
I can hear minus 24 when I'm listening to the FT8 signals.
I can't question that. I mean, I'm not saying that's not true, but I'm saying in terms of the amount and quantity and error check data.
Oh, well, we're not going to compare the human brain to the FT8 to the program, but I was just saying it can be done. It can be done, and it's very rewarding to pull a very weak DX station or a beginner who's calling you that's going to have his first QSO on CW out of the drink. It's very rewarding for everybody.
Lots of things about helping new amateurs is very rewarding. No questions asked. Okay, I'll shut up now.
Okay.
I'm embarrassing myself.
I think
You're not embarrassing yourself, Dan. It's a good question. Good comments. Thank you.
Marty has his hand up next.
He does. Well, go ahead, Marty.
Oh, thank you. And Howard, thank you for the great presentation. I actually learned code in the Boy Scouts and then dropped for a while and then got my license while I was in high school. I was never one of the fastest CW operators, and I never will be. But I found that getting involved in contesting, which is what my peers were doing for the most part, definitely helped build my speed. And the nice part about a lot of contests is there is a predetermined format. So you kind of know what to expect next. You don't know the content, but you know the format. And I find, like, for the beginning of a contest to the end, my code speed goes up about 5 words a minute in 48 hours. And I've been privileged to take part in a number of expeditions around the world for CQ Worldwide, both phone and CW. And I find the CW is actually, even though I'm not one of the fast guys, I find it actually more relaxing than trying to copy on voice. But I would encourage anybody who wants to, build up their confidence a little bit, get involved in some of the contests. Probably the most challenging will be ARL sweepstakes, because it's a long message header type exchange. But even that, if you know that numbers coming first and then a letter precedence and then a call sign and so on, you'll find that you can copy much better when you can anticipate what's coming next, not the content again, but the format, than if it's just out of the blue. Over.
Marty, very good comments, and I agree with you 100%. So much so that what we did is we made what we called a QSO protocol, a protocol, so that everybody knows what to send and what to expect. Now, we teach the protocol in 3 different stages on what is a CW contact, right? So protocol stage 1 is a salutation, like a greeting, like good evening, thanks for the call. Your RST comes next. QTH comes before name, and there's reasons why. And then protocol 2 would be rig and weather. Protocol 3, if you can't go any further than that, would be thanks for the QSO. And if you really want to get out of there, my wife's calling me for dinner, I gotta go, So that's protocol 1, 2, and 3.
Oh, that's
and
great.
When you expect that on the receiving end, you could open up QRZ once you get the guy's call sign, take the pressure off you, and he should be giving you QTH mostly next, and then comes name. Yeah. And then you're golden,
Excellent.
and we believe in the contest training, and we have classes for training for contests, and we take part in that K1 USN sprint every Sunday, because the exchange is known and familiar. It takes the pressure off the operator, it takes the unexpected and the nervousness away. And once you master that, well, then you can expand to what we call protocol 4, 5, and 6, where you say, my age is 60 years old and I'm a retired engineer, and hope you can go further than that.
Yeah, excellent. The other suggestion for those who are having some trouble copying through some of the noise that's typical on some of the lower bands is, of course, the background noise typically goes down as the frequency goes up. And I find that, on 10 and 6 meters, for example, you can hear a signal that isn't even barely touching the meter. But as long as you can hear it, you find you can copy it. There's nothing getting into it, no static crashes or anything else. So operating on those higher bands, and hopefully they will come back to their former glory as we progress in the solar cycle. That can actually make it easier, especially for a newer person, to copy without having to deal with all the other nastiness that nature throws in there on the 80 and 40.
But you want to know something, Marty? We teach in the advanced classes specifically with all of that noise. We play recordings. In my head copy class, we play recordings from the maritime radio CW, the ship to shore frequencies.
Which is low frequency, right?
But we play those recordings because they're loaded with all types of QRMs, chirps, buzzes, and QRN and everything, because the theory is if you can copy that stuff, then when you get on the air, you'll be ready and you don't have to spin the dial to find the most ideal station.
Okay, good.
So we train for the most difficult so that when you're on the air, you'll be ready for it.
Excellent. Like when I learned to fly out of Van Nuys Airport, which was the busiest general aviation airport in the world at the time. And then landing at the Podunk airports was a piece of cake.
Well, this goes back to, I think, what Anthony asked me a question about plateauing. I don't know if I answered that. How do we deal with the plateauing? And we do just that. So I believe that one of the reasons why people plateau is because they're just learning from sanitary computerized generated code. And how do you break the plateaus? Well, if someone's stuck at 15, did you ever see, Marty, when somebody comes to the plate, and Anthony, in baseball, they have 2 bats that they're swinging, they're warming up with 2, they drop 1. Well, the heavier bat felt a certain way and they drop that heavier bat, and then they're going to get around, in theory, the ball with a lighter bat. The same thing when an athlete is training on a treadmill. He'll speed it up, slow it down, speed up. That's like what we call periodicity training. And we do the same thing when someone's stuck with a plateau.
Okay, very
You're
good.
stuck at 15, we push you to 18. Well, you say, I can't copy 18. I know that, but you're going to go up there anyhow. Then we'll bring you down to 10 where you can't copy. And then we bring you back to 15 where you're stuck, and back up to 18 and mix you up really good, shake you up, and then you're going to break that glass plateau.
All right, great. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate that. Are there any more? I don't see any more hands. Barry, how's the chat doing?
Chat is quiet. Just a bunch of things pasted in there by Anthony. Some interesting links.
I'll be sending the chat out to everybody afterwards with the video and all that. So, all right, we need to make another call here for any hands to show. Now, when we say hands, we don't mean raise the hand this way. That we have some of that from time to time. But down at your bottom of your Zoom screen there, you'll have a thing that's called reactions, and usually to the right-hand side. And you got it where it says raise hand. That raise hand is what we're referring to. It will raise it, look like that. You see on my screen. And of course, if you click it again, it goes away. But usually the host will take it down. Okay, with that in mind, let's try again. Barry's got his hand up, and now he's got his hand down. Are there any more? Is there anybody who puts their hand up and want to say anything or ask a question? Boy,
I see a lot of my students in here today. I'm sure that they must have a question.
well, it's been very rewarding listening to you in your management style. Some of us, I used to work for digital equipment and Eastman Kodak and all that back in the 80s and 90s and such, where they had that management style. They turned the pyramid upside down. The customers and employees were the bosses, and it's a very rewarding management style for those that's involved with it. You're empowered to make mistakes, and that really makes the company or whatever you're doing, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be a company, be amateur radio, but when you're empowered to make mistakes, you're going to do a lot of good stuff.
Well, I'll tell you, there's a famous mistake. I mean, my career was in the chemical business, and sometimes I think about the mistake that was made at DuPont, where a guy, I can see that Oscar's shaking his head there. The guy made a mistake in the lab. He knocked over a beaker or something like that, and he created Teflon. Now, if he was really afraid to reveal that mistake and thrown that stuff out in the garbage, they might not have discovered that for a few more years. But that was a mistake.
A lot of mistakes have been come back to be very good results. Okay, do we have? Let's just open it up. Anybody want to jump in here real quick before we shut this thing down? I don't see anybody. This has been a great presentation. Just for us, it's been there, done that, want to do it again. And those that have never done that and love to do it. So we really appreciate what you're doing. I'll get the video out here shortly, along with the presentation in the chat, and you folks can share it with your clubs and other members, and hopefully we'll keep some ball going. And I see Paul over in Montana has got his thumb up. Okay, Paul.
Well, listen, I'd like to say thank you, Dan and Anthony, for having me. I really enjoyed it. I like these type of forums where we can exchange information, and I see quite a few of the Long Island CW Club students that showed up today, so thank you for that. And by the way, Amanda, I hear excellent things about you, and we're already talking about you being a teacher one of these days. That conversation was held today about 3 o'clock. So maybe your ears were itching a little bit.
Okay, Amanda, you're being called out.
Well, have a happy holiday season.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas to everybody and Happy New Year, and enjoy the holiday season as best as you possibly can.
Yes.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you. Merry Christmas, everybody.
For those who don't know, for those
And I sent you the presentation.
Yes, sir, I saw that. I want to quickly comment, we will not be having our Thursday RATPAC. We're taking it off for the holiday. We won't be doing it next Thursday either, but we will have another presentation on Wednesday. So hopefully we'll see a lot of you next Wednesday. Until then, happy holidays to everybody. And I'll say 73s.
Merry Christmas, everybody. Take care.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Night all. Stay safe.